The Toronto Maple Leafs saw their 2-0 series lead slip away. It's now a 2-2 series. David Morassutti of Locked On Leafs is here to talk about what was different down in South Florida and what the Leafs have to do to get back in command of the series. All that and more next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Leafs, David Morassutti. And David, a rough couple of games for the Leafs down in South Florida. And it just seemed to me in Game 4 that the chances that they had were pretty much stifled for most of this game.
Yeah, it was one of those where it felt like the Leafs there was a lot of perimeter play, and it just the first period the Panthers grabbed so much momentum. They established their game early, and the Leafs were playing catch up. Like, take 4 penalties in the period, and you look at the penalties that were called. It's mainly because the Leafs were, in bad positions, and made some dumb decisions. But the Panthers came out with more urgency, and the Leafs were a step behind in a lot of ways. And that to me has kind of been the story of this series, is that, when the Panthers have upped the physical play, the Leafs have kind of struggled. And, that's something that can't happen. That can't happen going forward. I thought in the first couple of games of the series, what gave Toronto kind of, what made them look more impressive is that they weren't backing down from the physical play from the Panthers. But now that the Panthers have kind of thrown their body around a little bit, we haven't seen that response from the Leafs. And to me, that I don't think the Leafs are. I think a lot of it has to do with the Panthers have realized that they need to up their game more after going down 2-0. And I don't think the Leafs have essentially kind of relaxed a bit. I just think that one team's up their intensity and the other team hasn't totally matched it.
Is there a line matchup that was different with home ice advantage for the Panthers in games 3 and 4?
I don't think so. I know a lot of people are trying to say now you can get Barkov playing with Matthews more, and that kind of limits. I don't think it's the matchups per se. I just think it's the mentality of the top guys on the Leafs and where they want to shoot the puck, right? If you look at the heat map from this game, the Panthers' goal, the goals they scored, both of them in front of the net. The Leafs, especially at 5-on-5, they struggled to get to that area. The Panthers had more high danger chances, especially at 5-on-5. They own I know some people feel a certain way about the expected goals and stuff, but the balances and whatever certainly looked like they went in Florida's favor, but it's because they earned those chances. Top guys, I don't think they really earned their opportunities, and when they did, it was either too late in the game or it was on the power play, which, yeah, you can get great looks on the power play, but you got to convert. Like, the Leafs got three power plays just in the second period alone. You got to bury those, especially when it's a 1-goal game and you're fighting, and any break can change can swing the game one way. And that was kind of my thought process, is that all it takes is one of your core guys, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, William Nylander, John Tavares. If one of those guys can score at any point of the game, it swings the momentum, and then Florida's maybe going a little more like, oh, maybe we're making it a little too easy on these guys. But, tonight, Mitch Marner, 0 shots on goal. You're not winning many games when your top players aren't getting pucks on net. And that, to me, that's kind of one of the stories of this game.
Talk to me about the goaltending situation. Any chance that Stolarz returns, and how important is it for the Leafs to get better goaltending?
I think the only way we can sort of think that Stolarz gets back in this series is if we see him on the ice. He hasn't been on the ice since he was taken out early in the series. And they did say he was progressing well. We don't know exactly what he is dealing with, if he's in any sort of concussion protocol or if there's another issue. There's playoffs time. You're not getting divulged a lot of information here. But I thought in game 3, Joseph Woll wasn't at his best, but neither was Sergei Bobrovsky. I kind of felt like it was a toss-up with the goaltenders. But game 4, Joseph Woll put up the type of performance that gave his team every chance, and the Leafs did not capitalize. And so I think for game 5, the thing is if Stolarz is skating and feels good, they probably might go back to him. But if he's not close or if there's any question marks, I thought Joseph Woll's play in game 4 suggests to me he can handle taking the net. Because initially goaltending was talked about so much, I don't think right now it's the should be considered the biggest concern for this Leafs team.
You talk about the big four and their lack of scoring or their lack of scoring chances even on Sunday. Give me a player on this Leafs team who is not one of the big four, who you feel just needs to step up his game for this team to jumpstart in game 5.
Yeah, I think if I'm the Leafs, Scott Lawn's one guy. He was the big addition at the trade deadline, and he's the 4th line center right now. I kind of feel like this is the moment here where you need a Scott Lawn to step up. Now, I'm not asking him to go out and score a bunch of goals. Bring a little more of the physicality, kind of help your team win a bit more of the matchups. There was one point in the game where it looked like he was going to go and take a big rush with the puck, had a good head of steam on him, and it just kind of got knocked off his stick. He's got to find a way to be a little more impactful. I understand 4th line, you're not going to really be able to do that so much. Maybe it's an opportunity here for Kraber to say, look, maybe we got to move some guys around and help shake things up a bit, because you don't want to overreact over one game. I get it. But there were some trends throughout this series that would suggest that some things maybe needed a little bit of a shakeup, but the coach didn't want to fiddle too much with a winning lineup.
As far as the physicality, and this has been a very physical series,
yeah.
Do you think the physicality favors the Panthers, or do the Leafs have what it takes in this lineup to go toe-to-toe with Florida and emerge victorious?
Well, I mean, I think any chance for physicality will favor Florida, in my opinion, just because that's the brand they're built off of. Yes, the Leafs have shown that they can handle being a more physical team. I just kind of feel like with the Leafs here, you don't necessarily need to match them toe-to-toe for every hit. But if you are going to land a hit, you got to make it count. I feel like that's probably an area there. Like I'm looking at who the Leafs are targeting. The 2 guys that had the most hits against them in this game were Reinhart, Lundell, and Jones. We know Seth Jones is an important blue liner for the team. Reinhart, a premier goal scorer. But they got to find a way to get to Barkov, get to Bennett, get to Marchand, get to Tkachuk, get to those guys a bit more. I feel like they're not picking on those guys. Like game 1, they went right after Barkov. That was apparent, and it took a bit of a bite out of them. They got to get back to doing that. They got to get back to going after the guys who are going to have more of an impact on the game. Yes, Reinhart will have an impact on the game. That's certain, but they got to go after the other guys who are kind of winning those other matchups.
Give me one more key for the rest of this series. Best 2 out of 3, 2 of the 3 games potentially in Toronto. What do the Leafs have to do to win it?
Make life tougher for Sergei Bobrovsky. First 2 games, I felt they did that. They were more aggressive towards him, threw a lot of shots on net, a lot of opportunities. They didn't do that as much in the last 2 games. I felt it was a bit easier. I would say game 3 they did. Game 3 was winnable because Bobrovsky wasn't at his best. Game 4, that felt like an easier night for Bobrovsky. That's not going to work out if you're thinking you're going to want to pull away in this series. You have to make life tougher for him.
All right, David, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
Yeah, you can go and follow and subscribe to Locked On Leafs podcast wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and also on Instagram at Locked On Leafs. That's where we're gonna have a lot of extra content. We'll have that over the next couple of days with the series now shifting back to Toronto. And you can follow us on X at Locked On Leafs, myself at _Morassutti, and my co-host Mike at Mickey_Canuck.
All right, David, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.